I woke up that morning to a sight that just about broke something inside me. Red flags staked along the ground where my grandfather taught me to fish, the same soil where his boots left prints I used to walk in as a kid. Those little strips of fabric weren't just markers. They felt like the start of an invasion, and I could already sense something was off, not just in the land, but in the way those men talked. Vests, cameras, that sharp, clipped tone folks use when they think paperwork makes them untouchable. The worst part wasn't even the trespassing. It was how they ignored me, talking over me on my own damn porch like I was an inconvenient ghost. Like my family's history was just background noise they could turn down. Now listen, I'm no hothead. I'm a construction engineer. I read blueprints for breakfast and can smell when something stinks with property lines. That morning in October, standing on our porch with my coffee cooling in my hand, I could see those three men in orange vests squatting near our vegetable garden, 50 yards from the house, jabbing surveyor's flags into the dirt like they owned the place. I didn't shout or wave my arms. I did what you're supposed to do. I called the sheriff's office. Figured it was a cut-and-dried trespass, one of those situations that gets sorted out by a badge and a polite conversation. But the dispatcher, she sounded like this was the least exciting call of her morning. I paced that porch for 20 minutes, watching those men document the land like they were taking inventory of their own living room. When the deputy finally arrived, he talked to the crew for 5 minutes tops, scribbled on his pad, and ambled back to me with a look that said, "You're the problem, not them." He told me it was a civil HOA issue, not a police matter. The way he said it, you'd think I was the one trespassing. I watched him drive away, and I swear, it felt like justice just packed up and left with him. When I finally walked down to those men, they were snapping pictures of our creek, Silver Creek, which runs through the back end of our 14 acres and has been in the family since my great-great-grandpa came home from overseas. They were measuring, jotting notes, acting like they were prepping for an auction. The leader, a heavy-set guy with a clipboard and a big attitude, barely looked up when I asked what they were doing. Environmental assessment for the HOA, he said, like that explained why strangers could stomp around private land. He handed me a flyer, covered in fake-seeming seals and bureaucratic language about community development and watershed protection. I looked at that flyer and knew right away something was wrong. The seals were just a little off, the font weird, like someone tried to make it look official using cheap design software. I was still grilling them when my grandpa Walter came out, 75, tough as a fence post and quiet as a ghost. He watched from the doorway, disappeared for a second. Then I heard the creak of his closet and the sound of something heavy. He came back with his old army rifle, held at his side, not threatening, just letting everyone know he was there. Walter walked down to us, steady as ever, and said, "You boys have authorization certificates?" The crew leader mumbled about HOA clearance, waving that clipboard like it was a badge. Walter didn't blink. "You got legal warrants?" His voice was calm, but you could feel the line being drawn. The silence after that could have lasted 10 minutes, but was probably 30 seconds. You could hear the creek, birds in the trees. Suddenly, the crew packed up faster than any contractors I've ever seen, loaded their stuff, and drove off. Walter just watched them go, then told me that was the 6th time they'd tried something like this. 6 times. I spent the rest of that morning dissecting their flyer. Green Line Environmental Assessment Phase 1. All that jargon about community enhancement, but tucked in the fine print was a bit about land use modifications, stuff that gets lawyers salivating. Walter poured coffee and sat across from me, patient as ever. "Your great-great-grandpa fought for this land twice," he said. "In the war and in court." That weight sat on me all day. The next morning, I drove into town to the county land office, a place that smells like paper and bureaucracy. The clerk, a thin woman with glasses on a chain, pulled up my property records and frowned. "According to this, your property's flagged for watershed impact assessment, but there's a problem. State law says you need 30 days written notice." We'd never gotten any notice. Then she showed me a digital consent form with a signature meant to be mine, except it looked like someone had forged it left-handed, then dragged it through a puddle. While I was trying to process that, I heard a too-friendly voice behind me. Rick Larson from Greenspire Development, the HOA's new consultant. He gave me that handshake that feels like someone checking your pulse for weakness. "If this becomes a protected zone, your land value could double," he said, making it sound like I'd just won the lottery. When I pressed him on the forged signature, he tried to pivot, saying it was just a clerical mix-up and environmental stewardship is good business. The county clerk, God bless her, interrupted him and pointed to the code on her screen. 30 days notice and the right to contest. She showed the records, no notification. And that signature? Very strange, she said. We'll need a verification report. Rick went from pink to gray in about 2 seconds. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my property. I dug into Greenspire's record and found a pattern. Partner with HOAs, fake conservation, get control, then build luxury resorts. Residents lose land they thought was protected. Rick tried to hand me a retroactive consent form, basically asking me to rubber stamp their trespassing. I told him where he could put it. That night, Walter laid out his old maps, one from the military survey in '64 and one Greenspire was using. The county's version moved our boundary 30 feet east, just enough to steal the creek bank. Greenspire's internal map showed the real boundaries. They'd been running this scam for years, and someone in the county office was in on it. We need to go public, Walter said. He'd been documenting everything, and I realized the fight wasn't just about paperwork. It was about defending family history. Visiting neighbors opened my eyes to the depth of the mess. The old lady 2 streets over had signed what she thought was a petition to protect the community, not realizing she'd granted access for surveyors. Some folks signed for profit, hoping to cash out if the area turned into a resort. Others, like the Martinez family, didn't care. They saw dollar signs. One neighbor warned me to mind my business, saying accidents happen to folks who stir up trouble. The most damning was Darla, the HOA president, who'd weaponized her grief after her husband died, signing people up for conservation while getting commissions from Greenspire. The community was split, some tricked, some greedy, some just scared. The last straw was finding a red survey flag planted in our front yard with a note. This isn't over. I called for an emergency HOA assembly and pressed Darla on the 30-day notice. She tried to blame a rogue board member and paint me as the troublemaker. I was ready to show evidence, but the projector malfunctioned. Sabotage, if you ask me. Then Walter cut through the noise. Who sold the creek rights? He laid out the forged documents. The room turned from confusion to fury as the evidence was passed around and the truth sank in. Darla finally admitted, on the record, that they'd expedited the assessments, skipping legal notification to meet Greenspire's deadlines. The room erupted. Darla was voted out. Legal action followed. Our lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, nearly cheered when I played her the recording of Darla's confession. This is gold, she said. Lawsuits were filed, the authorities alerted. But the fight wasn't over. 2 days later, another survey crew showed up, acting like nothing had happened. I started live-streaming the confrontation. When the surveyor tried to claim they had authority, I zoomed in on the forged documents. Rick showed up with a security guard, trying to bluster through it, but the live comments shredded his story. Then, when the crew started planting more flags, Walter came out with his rifle. He didn't threaten, just fired a warning shot in the air. The whole thing played out on the stream. Cops arrived, and with the evidence in hand, Rick was cuffed right there for fraud and outstanding warrants. The Greenspire crew, their authority vanished. News of the showdown spread. The video went viral. Within days, investigations launched. Greenspire's assets were frozen, their projects scrapped. Darla lost her house to legal fees. Her story a warning about the price of betrayal. The old county clerk who helped fake the records was arrested. Our neighborhood, once divided, came together for a barbecue by the creek. Kids running, neighbors singing old songs. Walter treated like a hero. Even the folks who doubted us lined up to thank him. Walter taught me how to preserve the original maps and records, how to keep the legacy safe. We buried a time capsule under the oak, maps, documents, and a single rifle bullet. So they'll know what it took to keep this place ours, he said. If you made it this far, tell me, have you ever had to defend what's yours from folks with deeper pockets and fancier paperwork? Drop your story below. If this hit home, hit like, subscribe, or tap that thanks button to keep the fight going. Stay stubborn. Don't let anyone redraw your map.